I just talked for 45 minutes with the co-founder of Keller Williams Realty. The company's valued at $2 billion, and he completely revolutionized the real estate industry. And he goes deep into sharing his business lessons that took him from zero to $2 billion in valuation. Welcome to the Capital Raiser Show. I'm your host, Weston Walker, and we interview only the best entrepreneurs and investment managers. Shout out to the sponsors that make this all possible: the Family Office Club, Capitalist Pro, and Invest Next. Today we have Joe Williams, the co-founder of Keller Williams Brokers, the largest real estate franchise in the world. Joe, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Weston, and good to be here with a young guy like you that's really setting your chops and affiliating with a guy like Richard Wilson. I can't think of being in a better position at your age.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, let's go into your backstory. You revolutionized the brokerage industry and created the largest franchise in the world. So give us the journey from how you started it. What was the backstory there?
I think everybody's backstory when you're doing something like this has to do with how you started as a kid. I was always very entrepreneurial, although for me, a real seminal moment was when I was 10 years old. I lost my dad. Uh, Heart attack. One day he's there, one day he's not. And it's mom and the three kids. I was the oldest son. So immediately everybody starts thinking about, what can we do to support the family? So by the time I was 13, I was working different places. I grew up in the late 50s, 60s. So, I'd be working two or three jobs at a time, after school. And so my senior year of high school, I wanted to buy a new car. So the only way I could buy a new car was to figure out how to get into what they used to call distributive education. And it's where you worked half a day, went to school half a day, and they still give you credit. So in doing that, at the retail store that I worked at, one of our best customers, a guy by the name of Tony Specie, just a great man. He he would come into the store. He had three sons, and this was a toy store, Weston. So we had this huge hobby counter, and we sold everything: Estes rockets, Lionel trains, cocks, gas-powered airplanes. Everything. So Tony was in there all the time, and I knew he was a real estate broker. So one day I kind of asked Tony, I said, Tony, tell me about the real estate business. How does it operate? Well, because I like selling. I like working with people. I'm a people guy. And so, it became evident to me that, hey, if I'm going to sell for a living, what could you sell at to make a lot of money? Well, real estate, insurance too. Definitely two of the product categories to look at. So Tony filled me in. I said, man, that sure sounds good to me. Now, at the time, I was a sophomore in college. So I went down, got licensed through Tony, and started selling real estate when I was a sophomore in junior college. Because I was putting myself through school, and anybody can put yourself through junior college if you got 40 hours a week easy. So I did that first semester, and about that time, I was running into 60 hours credit. That's all junior colleges really can do, right? Freshman, sophomore year. So I called Tony Meeks. He was the education director at the Texas Association of Realtors, and said, hey, is there any place I could get a degree in this? And he said, yeah, SMU or the University of Texas. Well, I was putting myself through school, so SMU was out of the question. It's a great school, but a little bit too expensive. But the University of Texas I could do. So transferred to Austin, got into UT. Back then, if you fogged a mirror, you could, and you were, a JUCO transfer, they'd accept you at the business school. So when I got out, My last semester, I went back into real estate and went to work for a guy, an independent broker here in Austin. And I wrote an article about how to recruit on college campuses for real estate brokers. And that was really unusual in Weston because, as you know, we're all on commission. I mean, you're not salaried employees in the real estate business. You eat what you kill. You don't kill anything you don't eat. So we started going around the college campuses here in Texas, recruiting people. And we went to Baylor, and I didn't interview Gary, but a guy that was with me, Sam Fitzgerald, did. And on the way back to Austin, I asked him, "Hey, did you interview anybody interesting?" And he says, "Well, there was this one guy," and that was Gary Keller. So Gary and I became fast friends, and about 6 years later, in 1983, we formed Keller Williams. And the idea was just, how do we build a better mousetrap? Okay, let's compare what everybody's been doing, and let's just come up with a better mousetrap. But unbeknownst to us, by 1986, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Louisiana literally got economically hammered. I mean, hammered. Oil went to $7 a barrel. We had the savings and loan crisis. This was before you were born, by the way. Uh, the government stepped in with the Resolution Trust Corporation, what we call the RTC, started auctioning off bank assets. We lost every single bank in Austin, Texas, except one. They just came in, they shut them down. Unlike '07, '08, '09, when the rest of the country had a major real estate hiccup, they didn't shut banks down anymore. They kind of learned their lesson because that really screws up an economy. But in '86, that's not what the Fed did. They came in, they shut down the banks because their collateral, their assets, their real estate assets dropped so far in value that they couldn't have enough collateral to run the bank. So they just shut them down and then sold everything with auctions. It was a mess. So at that time, Gary and I sat down and said, you know what? We need to change the way the broker and the agent work together. And that was what we did that really disrupted the industry. Because for the first time, we went to the agents and said, hey, look, we don't think we're the brand. And let me explain. If you and three of your buddies are playing golf one day, and you look at your three buddies and go, hey, I got this great offer from Microsoft, and we need to move to Bellevue, Washington. Do any of you guys know a good real estate agent? And, hopefully one of your guys goes, yeah, I got a great guy. Here's his name, here's his number. I'll call you and, give him a buzz. And the reality is, Weston, that's generally how a lot of professional services get referred. That's just not, it's not like somebody looks at it and goes, oh man, you need to call Keller Williams. They don't do that. They think of the agents as the actual business. It's kind of like when you're going to have your first child and you got to go find a pediatrician. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily call a pediatrician group. You go ask your friends, hey, who likes their pediatrician? What's their name? And so we went back to the agents and said, look, we really think that that's how the business operates. So the question is, why am I building the company brand? When the truth is, Weston, we should be building your brand. You should be building your brand. And this was a very different way to look at the real estate business. For years, brokers had spent money building their name, the corporate brand. And so all of a sudden, here Gary and Joe step in and go, you know what? We don't think that's very smart. Because, and, and here's a great analogy. A good friend of mine was an ER doctor. And he said, you know, Joe, hospitals don't really have patients. Doctors do. But a doctor can't function without a well-designed surgical center. And, Gary and I looked at it and said, you're right. We don't really have the customers and clients. Weston does. It's his client. We need to learn how to be the surgical center. And so that was a complete sea change about how to think about brokers and agents working together. So we went back to the agents and said, listen, from now on, everything we do as a company is going to be geared around you running your brand. And today, a lot of companies think that way, but 40 years ago, they didn't. And so we said, okay, from now on, everything we do as a company, we're going to revamp the policies designed around you being the brand. And it was a totally different way to think about the real estate industry. And I'll give you an example. We used to buy all of the signs. When you list a house, you come to the storeroom, grab a sign, go out there, put it out there, stick your name writer on it. Well, we used to buy all those signs. Well, we went back to the agents and said, this is stupid. It's your business. You should be buying the sign. Keep them in your garage. And the lock boxes. And oh, by the way, from now on, we're not going to pay for any advertising. We're just not doing it anymore. We're going to get you to pay for it. Now, in fairness, I'm going to give you a much better commission split. Instead of 50-50, you're going to start out at 70-30. I'll make 30%. You're going to get 70% of the commission. And oh, by the way, if this office can grow to a certain number of agents, I can come back to you and I'll give you, after you've sold, let's say, 7 homes, I'm going to give you all the money. You can keep 100% of the commission. And then every year you're going to roll over, okay? So every 12 months, once you sell 7 homes, you keep the rest of the money. Well, Westland, they'd never heard of this. No one had ever done this. And so it was far better economic.
It's like the U.S. reducing their income tax to zero. You know what I mean? They
Well,
never heard of it.
it was just such a different way because brokers for years and years and years had operated like Daddy Warbucks. Hey, Weston, I'm gonna buy your signs, pay for your ads, do all these wonderful things for you, and every time you close a house, we're gonna split the commission 50-50. And it's always gonna be that way. And now I'm coming back on, wait a minute, we think this is stupid. We don't need to take that much money because I'm gonna teach you how to go be responsible and run your own business. Because guess what? That's what it is. It's your own business. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of money and I'm going to give you the services that you can't do yourself. I'm going to buy the technology. I'm going to run the back office. I'm going to do all the things that you need a broker to do, but you're going to do all the rest. And so that's all we really did. But the changes were so fundamentally different to them and better for them because in the old days, if you worked for a broker and you decided to leave that broker, typically they would have a policy that says, well, listen, your clients are really mine. I keep a list of those clients. They're really mine, even though you worked with them. And now, with the change Gary and I made, I'm saying to you, Weston, if you leave me, you take all those clients because they're yours. They're not ours. They're yours. And so The agents are like, wow, that's a different way to look at. Well, but it made sense. It made sense. It's just like on the old broker, if you bought your home, what those brokers would say is, well, I'll give you a discounted commission because you're buying your own house. So instead of a 50-50 split, maybe you keep 75 and I'll keep 25. Well, we looked at the agents and said, that's just stupid. If you're buying your own real estate, we're not charging you anything because I want you to invest in real estate. That's the reason we're in the business. If a good deal comes down the pike, you should be buying it, not brokering it. And so, you know, it, there's a theory that I've always had, and I call it the stable table theory. Okay? And that's this. If I have a tabletop with one leg, how stable is it? Well, it's not. Two legs is still not stable. Three legs, it's a stool, but I'm not going to let my 5-year-old grandson on it. So if you have a concept or an idea or an enterprise, even your own marriage, you got to build it with four solid legs. And so you as a business person, one of your main jobs is to look at whatever it is you're going to be doing and go, okay, what are the four aspects of this business that are critical to everybody's success? And I call that, what are the four table legs? Okay. So for Keller Williams, the first table leg was understanding why we were in business. What Simon Sinek calls, what's your big why, right? Our big why was to get you to understand that it's your business, right? You're the brand. That was the number one table leg that we're working with right there. I would call that clarity. Show me a business that totally understands why they exist. And I mean, everybody in the organization totally buys into the idea about why they're there. And I'll show you a business that's laid a very good foundation for future success. Okay? So that was table leg number one for us, getting the agent to understand you're the brand. Table leg number two was, and this is common for a lot of companies, by understanding our clarity on table leg number one, it was easy to then figure out how we run better economics. Okay? How do we get those commission rates as high as we can for the agents? How do we get them policies that allow them the freedom to really run their business? And for us, it was much better economics, which, by the way, once I got you to pay for all the advertising, the signs, the lock box, all of that, I now got my expenses, instead of them doing this, variable, real estate is, it cycles. Every 7 years, we're on a cycle. Well, what this allowed me to do was now to run my expenses almost on a set number. I knew every month exactly what it was going to cost to run that office. So it really helped me as a business owner to be able to project my profitability far, far better than the old system we were on. And the agents could too. So table leg number two was far better economics. They had a better commission split. We could run our offices so much more efficiently. It just worked. Table leg number three, for us, and for many businesses it's the same, was go get the best people. Go get the best people. It's amazing how, if you're running a company and you've got the best leadership at the top, how when problems crop up, it doesn't matter because everybody's smart enough to figure it out. Okay? And that goes for every company. I tell a story when we had about 60 offices. Now, understand, we're a franchise, okay? I'm no different than McDonald's. We have franchise owners who own our offices. They're independently owned offices. Now, a few today are corporate owned, but by and large, when we started, they weren't corporate owned, they were all franchise offices. So we hired a guy who came down from Charlottesville, Virginia, Bain Hinion, really good guy. And he interviewed all of our people, and Gary included. And he came back and he said, look, I love your ideas. You know, these ideas you percolated. But you guys don't know anything about franchising. You really don't. And Weston, he was right. I mean, we're just a couple of swinging real estate brokers out there doing our thing based on our experience level, but we never run a franchise. And it's a bit of an art form. So he came back, he said, look, you're going to hire me and I'm going to teach you how franchising works with models and systems, okay? And these have to be very consistent, very symbiotic, and it starts, number one, with finding the most talented operators, okay? And so it took him a year to teach us the 10-step process to finding the most talented people. And believe me, I talk to friends of mine all the time from everywhere, all walks of life. And I tell them this story, and they look at me and they go, what are those 10 steps? Because, you know, and the first thing he teaches us is how you interview people. Here's the application you work with. Here's the questions that are critical. And I mean, Winston, for years I've been interviewing people, but I don't recall anybody ever sitting me down going, here's how you interview people. You with me? I mean, none of us had ever learned that. Well, that's what he taught. In fact, one of the first things he would take us through when he trained this, he'd take you through an hour exercise on the cost of a bad hire. And believe me, once he takes you through this exercise, it's mind-blowing. I mean, you think about, you know, you hire a manager, you work with them for 6 months, they turn out to be the wrong hire, then you have to fire them, you know, and it's a mess and blah, blah, blah.
And then you
What
start
did that
over.
cost?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me tell you, he takes you through this exercise, and it's very fast. You look at it, you go, holy smokes. And that's why everybody comes up with a rule. Hire slowly, fire quickly, okay? So he took us through these 10 steps, and I've shared this with Richard Wilson sometimes at the Family Office Club in a very summarized, you know, fashion, because at Richard's deal, I only can talk for 15 minutes. So there's only so much I can impart in that short a time. But that was incredible because it helped us fulfill table leg number 3, go get the best leaders. And in truth, when 07, 08, 09 hit, the great real estate recession, we're the only company that grew. Everybody else went backward. All our
That's
competitors
crazy.
went backward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and why? We had the better people, pure and simple. That's what it was. So, table leg number 4 for us, and I think again for any really good company, is create an environment, what we call culture. Create a culture where people feel like owners inside your own company. I mean, I don't care what business you're in. You could be running a pizza restaurant. If you can get those employees in there to feel like they own the place, how successful will that make you? Well, you'd be off the charts. So we did a lot of things to create that culture, but one of the things we did, and this is very interesting, a lot of people don't know this. I remember when I got out of college, there was a company called Amway. Now, Amway is still around. And I remember going to an Amway presentation, and the guy was talking about all the stuff they sold and how it worked. And if you know anything about multi level, he goes up on the board and he starts drawing these circles, right? And how you recruit people and all this stuff. And I didn't have any interest in selling for Amway, and it's a fine company, by the way. But I remember going back up the guy going, tell me about these circles, how they work. Because in the real estate industry, when we're recruiting people, it's very common to get everybody together, the salesman, and go, hey guys, we got 5 vacant desks back here. Go find us some people. When you come across a real estate agent you really like, bring them in, man. Let's recruit them. All companies, sales companies, are constantly looking for good people. So we came up with a system where if they brought us good people, we could compensate our guys based on a multi-level program. But it made sense. And it was profit share driven. So, Weston, if you were in Tampa, Florida one day and you talked to an agent and he says, tell me about this Keller Williams. I've heard about it, but what do they do? And you spend 10 minutes with them, maybe you're waiting on an Uber, whatever. And the guy says, that's interesting. And you say, well, you ought to go down and talk with one of our offices here in Tampa. And next thing you know, guy says, I need to do that. So better yet, I'll contact the manager in the office in North Tampa. I'm going to give you a buzz. You have a card? Yeah, sure. Next thing you know, that agent goes in, finds out how it works, comes to work in the Tampa office. Anytime they close a deal and the office is profitable, you make some money off the deal. And the only difference with multi-level is it goes several layers. And in our system, it goes 7 layers. So if that guy recruits somebody eventually, maybe they never do, doesn't matter. But if he does, next thing you know, everybody in the line does a deal, you're going to get a check on the 17th of the month following based on a percentage of what those guys were doing. And it's just a cool idea. It was a pure profit sharing program. And let me tell you something. From little ideas come massive things. 2 years ago, we clocked over $1 billion in profit share checks that we sent back to our agents.
Wow.
I mean,
Congratulations.
that's incredible. Now, by the way, statistically, we know that only 46% of our agents even collect profit share checks. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
guys are with us and they don't care about that, and it's okay. They're there for the training, the technology, the culture, all of that. They don't really care. But then there are some agents who, yeah, they regularly uh, do a little recruiting, and next thing you know, they've got 15 people in their downline. And whether they get out of bed or not, we send them a check. So that basically completed the concept of creating a culture where a lot of the agents feel like, hey, I'm really invested in what these guys are doing. Okay. And again, when you go back and you study successful businesses, it typically boils down to 3 or 4 or 5 things that they've really studied and looked at and said, okay, we're going to be the best at this, we're going to be the best at this, and these are going to be our core values, and we're going to go make it work. And so once we started to get on a roll, and that would be probably 2 years after we had contacted Bain. So we're going back 96, 97. That's when we really started to see the hockey stick growth. Okay. In one year we had 8,000 agents. Next year we had 15,000. Next year we had
Whoa.
26,000. And every year we'd get together at our annual
Now you're at
convention.
145,000, correct?
Yeah, we're probably, I think the total right now is probably around 165, 175,000. And of course now
That's
we're in
huge.
64 countries. We're the largest privately owned real estate franchise globally. Number of agents, for sure. Could be based on volume as well. Truth is, nobody really knows our volume because we're private. So they don't they don't know what our numbers are, and we don't put them out there like that. All of my competitors are now public. So it's easy for me to know what they're doing because they've got to publish all their numbers and we're still private. So but we're in a very
Yeah.
good position. So, we don't um, one of my next main competitors, I think he owes something like 1.3 billion in debt, and Keller Williams doesn't owe a dime to anybody. So,
Mm.
and you don't go public unless you really need the money to go do something.
No.
Now, that being said,
Yeah, and you
some of
run
the
pretty
hardest,
consistent expenses.
yes, some of the hardest stuff we have to do now is to compete with competitors who don't necessarily care about making a profit. And that's problematic. You know what I'm saying? I mean, imagine being someone that competes with Jeff Bezos, where for his first 15 years, he wasn't making a profit.
It's
And it's a
interesting.
different
Yeah.
mindset now when people are starting businesses now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and for people that are starting businesses, honestly, the people that listen to this show, maybe they have $1 million a year in revenue or profits, and a lot of these guys that listen to our show are in private equity as well. They invest into companies, and if you were starting over today and kind of scaling up your firm, what would be the main things you would focus on?
Well, again, it gets back to when you're looking at buying a company, I'm kind of old school. I mean, last time I was in Beverly Hills, and I got off the stage, this guy walks up and says, "You know who you are, Joe? You're the Charlie Munger of real estate." And I'll take that as a compliment. Obviously, Charlie was Warren's, partner who just died last year, I guess. Um, I mean, when I'm looking at an opportunity or a company or anything, I'd like to know what their hook is. Okay. What are they doing that is difficult to replicate? Okay. Then we look at who's in there running the operation and how smart are they? Because in service organizations, all you're buying is what sits between everybody's ears. And so it's very incumbent to look at who's running the operation, what's their track record. Uh, so I guess one of the comments I would make, Weston, if I was doing it all over, starting again today, if I was a private equity guy looking to make investments, those are some of the things I'm looking at. Who's in there running the operation? And what's the clarity of the whole idea behind it? It's kind of like when you come up with a new idea, your first question is, will the dog eat the dog food? And by that I mean, will people buy what it is you're selling or what it is you're putting together? Because demand is a critical factor. I see a lot of stuff coming out sometimes. We sit there and kind of look at it and go, I don't know if this is going to work. You know what I'm saying? It's a great idea, but it's kind of like phone apps. You can come up with a phone app, but if you can't figure out how to get people to go in there and utilize it, doesn't matter. It may be a really great idea, but if you can't get them to utilize it, doesn't matter. Because in that business, it's like I've always said, there's only three ways you make money. Okay? One, you have a monopoly. And there are monopolies out there. I mean, Amazon has kind of built themselves a monopoly bubble. Because there's people out there, but I don't see anybody who's really going to be able to challenge Jeff Bezos anytime soon. So, monopoly number one. Number two, your expertise, the quality of the item is so superior that you've carved out a niche. And so you could say you've done it by margin. Okay, your niche is so good that your margin is going to be protected. Okay, ran into a guy the other day. cuts diamonds for a living. Well, that is an expertise that, you know what I mean? Not everybody has that expertise. He can charge whatever he needs to charge because that's a very, very explicit expertise. And then the third way is you do it through volume. You do it through volume. You come out with a product that's great. You can lower the price and you get it out there for everybody. It's it's Waze, it's GPS. I mean, when I look at the phone, some of those app products are some of the best because everybody's going to buy it for $3.99 a month. It's worth it to me to know when the storms are rolling into Austin, Texas on my radar app. But that's it. Monopolistic position, margin, or volume. That's how you make money. So if I'm a private equity guy looking at stuff, that's literally what I'm doing. What's the angle of this product? What's the angle of the people that are running it? How can I buy this? And what most private equity guys are trying to do is increase the value. We do land development deals where what I did is, this is what got me into Richard Wilson's world. We put together a land fund. And what we do with the land fund is I take advantage of the fact that I've got 165,000 agents out there. And they come across tracts of land. They're off market. Typically, 40% of them are family related. Joe, my uncle owns 50 acres in North Raleigh. It's been in the family for 80 years. He's thinking about selling it. Cool. Does he need a JV partner? you know, because of what I've created, we get this huge deal flow that no one else sees this kind of deal flow. And so
No.
what we're able to do is go in there, put it under contract, and then we go entitle it, turn it into a subdivision, bring the water, bring the wastewater, whatever, and then we flip it to a builder or even a developer. We don't even do the vertical construction. We get it entitled. We just bought 365 acres in North Carolina. Fantastic location, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Just hot market.
Can't beat
Disney's
it.
going in there with a huge development, Astoria. Well, we're right down the road. And it's not a bad thing to be right down the road from Disney. And, we bought the land for $15 million. We're going to spend another $45 million putting in the infrastructure. 3 years from now, then we'll start to sell the lots. But we've already pre-sold the whole thing to a national builder for $120 million. So
Wow.
there's $37 million worth of profit that we as the general partners we'll split that up between year 3 and year 6. So what we do is we go to investors and go, would y'all like a piece of this? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
a no-brainer. Because
Who are
land
the
does,
main people you raise from? Do you raise from family offices or individuals?
yeah,
Like, who's your
you
investor
know,
base?
here's what I would tell you, Weston. So we went out on the road and I started doing the dog and pony show, to explain it because most people don't see a fund like this. I mean, nobody's really doing. You got to know what you're doing to do this. And a lot of response. But what happened was we had one guy. We were raising 150 million, okay, for the fund, and that's enough to go do 4 or 5 really good projects. I mean, our internal rate of return on stuff like that runs from 20 to 35. Good return, really good return. Uh, but this one guy stepped in and said, I'll provide the money. Okay.
One guy.
I mean, if I can do a fund with one guy, that makes my life infinite. So I feel bad in
Too
a way
easy.
because, we talk to a lot of family offices, high net worth individuals. Everybody got it. But then this guy pops up. And so I just kind of went, Mom, with the rest. And, I'm a firm believer that the big man drives the bus. And I just think the big man was driving the bus on that because I would have never in a million years thought that's how this deal would have gone down.
Yeah.
And
And give us
before
some
that,
other examples of deals
oh,
if you
well,
can,
before
because you
that, the way
started
we,
in about 2004, and you've
yeah,
done several of these large developments since then. So
yeah,
give
we,
us some
well,
examples of projects.
I mean, the benefit, the nice thing for us is we have timing on our side and expertise as to where the land deals are. So right now, if I was doing land deals, I'm looking for distressed stuff, okay? Because typically what happens when a developer gets into trouble, he gets into trouble for one of two reasons. Number one, he gets into a timing issue. He's stuck with the city or he's stuck with the California Coastal Commission. I mean, we don't even do stuff in California. I can't because it takes forever to get things approved. So we just can't go there. So we tend to stay in Florida, North Carolina, and Texas because we know those areas and they're the growth areas. And so we did 3 deals in Florida, for example. And this was back in '07, '08, '09, when we could buy stuff for pennies on the dollar because my guys can locate it. And so we bought like 169 acres. It was going to be an RV park, but the guys' lots were 55 feet across. Well, guess what? You can put single family homes on 55-foot lots. So we bought the land, turned the site plan around, went from RV to single family, and got it all entitled and site plan done, and we flipped the whole deal to D.R. Horton. So we're buying it for X, and then we're flipping the land for 3X. Well, that works. That works. And I can do it because I've got local guys in that county. I mean,
Mm.
I had local KW guys, commercial guys working in Fort Myers. They've done some of their own development stuff. They knew who the engineers, the surveyors, the city council, the mayor. We had the contacts. Again, because KW is such a huge operation. So I'm just taking advantage of what we've created to go out there and create these little pockets of ways to make money. And my comment to these family offices is they would consider this an alternative investment vehicle. That's what they would call this. And it is. Because normally they're not investing in guys like us doing entitlement of raw land and turning around and selling it. But, if you do this in like the single family area, which is where we like to stay, there's just not enough houses out there. I mean, the nation is short anywhere from 2 million to 4 million units, based on whose report you read. But I can tell you, and so whenever we do these residential subdivisions and get them entitled, selling them's a no-brainer. We got plenty of national, regional builders out there looking for it. And they don't like to do that. They want to buy finished lots. If I'm D.R. Horton, I don't want to get in the development side. I am happy to pay retail price for the lots. I can still build my homes, make plenty of money. But Weston, I'm going to let you go do the development because when you're developing in an area, there's a lot of work to it. It's political. It's you got to have the right engineers. You got to have the right experience. There's a lot of ways to screw up a deal like that. But for us, we put this land under contract and we spend 90 to 120 days double checking all the things we know and come up on it. And if we're satisfied at that point, boom, then we close the land and then we go do the deal. So
Mm.
it's a really neat way to go make money. And we don't, with a $150 million fund, again, we're talking 4 or 5 deals. The average deal we're buying is probably around the $20 million range.
Yeah, and you get that exclusive deal flow from all your agents that you've obviously built the long-term trust in. And so
Yeah.
one last question. I know we're over time, Joe, but really
Yep.
appreciate you coming on. What do you think is the number one skill set to scaling a company?
Well, here's what I would tell you. Here's what I tell college kids when I go speak to them on campus. I say, Weston, it doesn't matter to me or not whether you get your degree, but let me tell you, 85% of your success is going to come down to 3 things. Number one, what your ambition level is. Okay? Because if your ambition level is where it's going to be, then you're going to develop number two, and that's your discipline to go make things happen. because most of the time success is not a bunch of secret ingredients. It's just hard work in the right areas. And that's the discipline. So if you know what you're after, then you're going to develop the discipline to go get it done. If you want to lose 10 pounds and you know you're not supposed to eat dessert at 9:30 at night, if your ambition level is to lose those 10 pounds big enough, you won't eat that ice cream. That's the discipline part. So beyond the ambition and the discipline, the third thing is, and this is critical, how well you can convey concepts and ideas to people.
Mm.
So much company success is how well you can tell your story about why you exist and what need I'm able to fulfill for you, the customer. And that's it. And it can be
Yeah, that's a
simple.
big deal.
Again, it's just like the guy, a friend of mine, he runs an electrician operation here in Austin, Texas. He's one of the few guys, he's a classic case. He's built this huge electrical operation. He's one of the few guys that when the crash came in 86, he didn't have to sell his plane. Because guess what? You're always going to need electricians. And the internet's not putting them out of business. And the guy lives in a multi-million-dollar house in my neighborhood, and he's extremely good with his customer care, understanding the customers, and tailoring his business from his website down to the lowest end guy he hires. Everybody really has a professional air about him. It's made him a highly, highly successful guy. And they
Yeah, and just
rocket.
building that recession-proof business. Because you went through the '07, '08 crisis and he did as well through building that recession-proof, infrastructure and people and assembling that team
Well,
to really scale the firm.
don't get me wrong. We felt it like everybody else too, right? But we were able to survive through it because in the real estate business, like a lot of industries, you're going to have cycles. It's like the multifamily business now. I laugh. Uh, Building apartments is always about supply and demand. And the two are rarely in sync. We either got too much supply or too much demand, and it constantly, I call it dog paddling. The apartment industry just dog paddles constantly. And that's what it's doing now. So, certain industries never really change. And that's one of my, not that we have time to talk about it, but I always talk about my 4 rules of the road. One of those rules is that human nature, everything changes except human nature. Human nature never
Mm,
changes. So if you understand how human nature operates, you're going to be way ahead of your competitors because that part never changes. There's
never
always going to be
changes, no.
a bad guy internationally. Last night Israel pummeled Iran. Well, guess what? There's bad players worldwide stage. They're never going away. That's why you have standing armies. You just have to have them.
For sure. Yeah, well, Joe, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and yeah, we'll get this posted next week.
That's great, Weston. Glad to be able to do it. I hope it can help the listeners. Let's keep rocking and rolling. We're living in the greatest nation in the world, man. I can't think of a better place to be than here.
Of course, especially Austin.
Oh yeah, I can't complain about that either.
Yep, for sure. All right, thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Weston.